I guess we'll get started. What's up? I'm Zix from Skywind. I guess I'm the nav mesh lead over there. I do some level design. I do some landscaping. I do 3D architecture stuff. I've done a couple clutter items. I implement 3D things. I do a whole lot of stuff. And I'm not very good at any one of those things, but I do a lot. So there's that. I'll be talking about specifically today learning to love tile sets. Woohoo, because it's Valentine's Day themed. It's just a little tutorial on how to make tile sets. For all you 3D guys, like this is mainly for you. If you want to work on a tile set or go back and edit one, sort of optimize one, make sure it all works, because you know, like a lot of tile sets that get made, sometimes they don't snap, or sometimes they just don't really work very well. Well, this will be one presentation to help you guys, as well as creating some new stuff. Level designers, this might help you. It'll give you like some insight into what a 3D person actually does. So on your end, like if you need to request something from a 3D guy, you can say, hey, you know, it'd be really cool to have this piece. Watching this presentation as a level designer will sort of help you understand, you know, the mindset you have to have in order to sort of go back to your 3D guys and go back and forth. Same for 2D people. It might help you with like, this is how a tile set works. So in your designs for like dungeons for whatever mod it is, you might be able to break up those concepts even better for the 3D artist in order to sort of expedite their process in getting pieces out. So yeah, there's a little bit of everything for everybody in here, but it's mainly for the 3D guys. And I'll go over some stuff that I've been doing for Skywind recently, which is Vivec City. So I'll give you a sneak peek of that at the end. Yeah, let's get started. Oh, also as a little side note, to anybody just getting into 3D, I have like less than a year of experience, and I use Blender, and that's basically it. Like I got into this for free. You just have to put in the time and effort, and like I started with a mushroom ingredient, and now I'm making one of the most iconic cities in Elder Scrolls. So you just gotta work at it and practice, and then you'll be able to hopefully get to the same point. So in this presentation, I'll go over what a tile set is, just for anybody who doesn't know. I'll go over how to create one, so that's the bulk of the presentation. Some basics, some logistic things, planning, and then we'll like break apart a tile set and talk about what pieces you're going to want to make. I'll talk about how the tile set is put into Creation Kit, not necessarily implementation, but sort of how in the Creation Kit a tile set looks. We'll talk a little bit about level design, and then at the end I'll go over what I've been working on recently, which is the Vivec City tile set. So we'll start out with what the heck a tile set is. It's at its most basic level, it's a modular set of objects that are meant to snap together to build greater structures. In our case, it's in the Creation Kit. In the most basic cases I could find, Legos. Legos are all, every single Lego piece is basically a piece of a tile. So your tile sets in this case would be, you know, the building or whatever. Same with like Minecraft. At its core, the entire game is just one big tile set sandbox. Every single tile set piece, however, is just you know, 64 by 64 pixel cubes. So that's as simple as it gets. But if you want to think about tile sets in the most simplest form, Minecraft is it. Tile sets, it can be like a broad range of things. So this is from a board game. It's Heroes something. I can't remember the name of this board game, but oh my god, it's super fun. If you guys haven't seen this, check it out. They use a hex-based system, so their tile set is hex-based. Yeah, HeroScape, that's the one. Thanks. Yeah, they use a hex-based tile system, and their tile set is literally just hexagons, and you can make structures out of that. And then, of course, we have Skyrim, which is what I'll be talking about. So I just have a couple cave pieces here. This is what a tile set looks like in Creation Kit. All these tile sets, they're made up of many pieces, and they all have to follow a set of rules. Those rules we'll talk about in detail, but it's basically a grid system, snapping, and they, as the name implies, they have to tile. These are a couple example tile sets in Skyrim. Level designers, this is going to be completely obvious to you. 3D guys, this might be new to you. 2D guys, I don't know, maybe it might be new to you, who knows. But anybody who's hung out around any Skyrim modding server knows this. You've got some tiles of the Nordic tile set here. You've got some tiles of the cave tile set here. And then one of my favorites from Skyrim, just because I used it a lot back in the day, is the Solitude tile set. For like homes and buildings and whatnot. You can sort of see some similarities between them. So for like the cave and the Nordic stuff, you have walls, which are pretty basic. You have corners, so there's a corner piece here, corner piece here. You have mid pieces, which are usually the bottom and the top, so floor and ceiling. And then for Solitude, like you've got things like these pillars, which sort of bridge wall pieces together. And then you also have these larger pieces, which they're generally for more specific things, like this whole stairwell is one piece, but it tiles to the rest of the tile set, so it's considered part of it. Okay, so this is the bulk of the presentation. Any 3D guys, feel free to take notes, whatever. This is the big stuff. It's how to create one. So like I mentioned, there are three main concepts when building a tile set. Also, feel free to like interrupt me if you have questions or whatever. I'm gonna try to keep it under like an hour, but I want to make sure we get through things. So, yeah, feel free to ask questions. But if we're running out of time, I might just be like, yeah, let's move on instead. Yeah. So first main concept of making a tile set, you have to have a grid system. Otherwise, it just won't work. The grid system has to be in Creation Kit units, quote unquote. They use a system based off of multiples of 256 is usually the smallest grid they use. So 256, 512, 1024 is a 2048. So like that's width in pixels. Or if you set up your Blender scene to have units in metric, we'll talk about some of those logistics later. You have to set the grid up to be one of these. To go along with the grid system, you can kind of think of it as a footprint almost. If you look at it from a top-down orthogonal view, you have to have this sort of footprint that all your pieces fit within. The footprint has to be set up to the grid, so it's got to be one of those metrics here. And any derivations from that, to be able to snap together, it has to be a multiple of the grid basis, one of these values here. So it could be, 2048, or it can be a division of that. So it can be 128. So like oftentimes you'll, level designers, you'll go into like Creation Kit, want to make a cave, you'll have a normal piece, which is like 256 by, I think, they're like smaller width, so it's a little less than that for the hallways. But then you'll want a half piece, so it'll be like 128 by whatever that width is. Just making sure I'm covering everything here. Okay, yeah, so mid pieces here, I made sure to color code everything so you guys can tell these apart. Mid pieces, they'll cover the entire footprint. They need to tile together, so if you imagine like 2x2 Lego piece, it'll be the entire footprint. However, things like walls, they'll have a little bit cut out, so they might be 256 by 230, and corner pieces have to be cut out on, I guess, each of the sides where they have these walls. And there's a reason for that. So when you start making your tile set, it's a little hard to tell what piece is what here because it's orthogonal top down. But when you start to do it, you want to make sure that there's gaps here between like your walls. So these here are wall pieces. These are also wall pieces, whereas these, or this one right here is a mid piece, and these two are mid pieces. If you were to have this wall piece go all the way to the edge of the footprint, then you would have Z fighting here in a 3D space. It might not be the case, you know, like this is as basic as it gets. If you were to do more detail or something, it might not Z fight along that whole space, but you'll have Z fighting. Like your rooms will just end up running into each other in practice when you start building your tile sets in Creation Kit. So with certain grid pieces, you're going to want to have certain gaps within the footprint. This is a real-time example of the Skyrim Nordic set. So you have this mid piece here. This is as orthogonal view as I could get it top down. But you have this mid piece here. It covers the entire footprint. I try to have the CK selection box on it so you can tell. This is a wall piece. It's got, you know, a gap here. So that green line is where it is in CK. Or where the bounds of that object ends. And then same thing for this corner piece. So you've got space here at the top and space here on the side. And that lines up perfectly with what I was talking about previously. So you want to make sure those pieces have space when you're dealing with a wall, with a corner, anything that's basically not the mid piece. The mid piece is the only thing that's going to take up the entire footprint. Okay, so moving on to snapping, which is the second main concept of tile sets. These pieces have to snap together. Otherwise, you know, when you're making a cave, when you're making a house, when you're making a dungeon, suddenly the floor pieces don't snap together. You know, your Legos aren't built to specifications. Then you can't build anything. It just doesn't work. Snapping is when the origins of these objects or pivot points line up with each other on the grid. And same thing, like the origin points, they're at a certain point in the object. That's basically what I mean here. The origin has to be on the grid, otherwise it won't snap properly. And it has to be within that footprint that we talked about previously. So this is dealing with translational snapping. This origin here, that yellow dot in the middle there, is what it looks like in Blender. You want to make sure the origin piece is, like for the mid pieces, for example, smack dab in the center. Moving on, like for these example pieces I made here, the origin for this mid piece is right in the center. The origin for this wall piece is sort of at the edge of the wall, but it's still on the grid, mind you. The origin for this corner piece is at the corner of the corner piece. Again, it's on the grid. It doesn't really matter where you put the origin, so long as it's on the grid and so long as it's consistent. And if it's consistent and if it's on the grid we talked about previously, again, that's the 256, 512, 10, whatever value, then your tile set should snap. And if you have your Blender scene set up exactly like you would have a scene in Creation Kit set up, then it'll work seamlessly. Exactly how you have it in Blender, it'll work the same way in Creation Kit. Snapping also covers rotational snap. So on that pivot point, when you rotate your object, this is the same object rotated at 45-degree increments, your object will rotate around that pivot point. So it's really nice for level designers, like when you have the pivot point for the mid pieces, smack dab in the middle of the mid piece, so that when they rotate it, you know, it rotates perfectly around the center and not at, like, you know, a corner piece would rotate at the corner because it's a corner piece. So it just kind of makes sense. It's more for ease of use. This wall piece, you can see how the origin is here, like at the edge of the wall, sort of at the bottom. It's super nice for level designers because when they're making a wall or when they're making a room and they want to use these wall pieces, the walls rotate around the front of the wall and rather like not the middle. It's more an ease of use thing, but this is pretty nice for level designers. This is how it looks in Creation Kit. So the origin or the pivot point of the object or the tile set piece is going to be this like 3D plus. Every level designer knows what this looks like. 3D guys, I hope you know what this looks like. If you're making like NIFs and whatever. This is the Skyrim Nordic set. So the example that I gave previously, it's a little bit different. They have their origins just smack dab in the middle of every one of their pieces so that it rotates like perfectly without it sort of going around the origin, which is completely fine. Again, it's like personal preference for level designers and 3D guys alike, but it has to be consistent one way or another. So these guys at Bethesda had their origin points set at the center of their pieces and at the bottom of their pieces. So, you don't have your origin point like up here for the mid and down here for the wall. They're all at the center and they're all at the bottom. Another example, this is a set from Skywind. You can see that the origin points for the Dwemer small room tile set are in the middle of the piece, like just in a 3D space. It's like on the z-axis in the middle, which can be odd for level designers. It's a little different from having it at the bottom, but at the same time, it's consistent. So as long as it's consistent, everything should work perfectly fine in Creation Kit. And these are really easy to set in Blender. The origins, it takes like only a little bit of attention to do. All you got to do is like move around your 3D cursor, make sure that's on the grid, and then set it, and you're basically golden. I think that's it for snapping. Okay, so last main concept for making a tile set is, as the name implies, tiling. This mainly deals with textures and UV mapping, which I'm not the greatest at, but it's necessary, so I'm going to talk as best I can on it. Feel free to correct me, any other 3D people in here. But I'll do my best. So textures that are used on a tile set, to my knowledge, have to all be tileables. And by that, I mean, you have your 1K by 1K texture. Each tile set piece is going to have to snap together. So when you extrapolate that 1K by 1K texture to multiple tile set pieces, they end up snapping together and looking seamless from a distance or up close even. Different types of pieces will need to have different, what am I saying here? Oh yeah. Yeah, so different types of pieces have to tile differently. So floors can be rotated 90 degrees in any direction, right? So the floors have to tile 4 different ways, which can be tough for a texture artist, but I'll show you an example later. It can be really simple. Walls, for example, just as a different example, they only need to tile horizontally unless you plan on stacking them vertically. So like if you don't include a ceiling piece, those walls will have to tile vertically as well. And as a final point, textile density for your tile set pieces has to be preserved in order for it to look good. Textile density, I'll define it later, but it's basically like, let's say you have your floor piece number 1 and floor piece number 2 here. If you had more squares on number 2 in this little example texture, then the textile density is going to be off. This texture will be more dense than this texture, and it'll just look gross when you smack it next to each other. Like this one will have more detail, that one will have less detail, and then the player is going to be like, what? This is kind of confusing. So main point here is you can see how row M in this textile density texture, it's going to tile horizontally. And then column 13 is going to tile vertically. Okay, so I talked a little bit about floor pieces, tiling 4 different ways. When these are snapped together, this is the same piece. So like this is floor piece 01 or whatever you would call it in Creation Kit. This piece has to snap to the piece to its left, to its right, north, and south. So it has to tile 4 different ways. And imagine if this middle one was rotated 90 degrees. Just because either the level designer had their camera like moved differently in Creation Kit, they felt like rotating it to give it a sort of different look, so that it wasn't as repetitive in the texture. They have to tile 4 different ways. This is an example in the Nordic tile set. So notice how these pieces are rotated differently. This big stone in the middle here is the best example. So like, see how like the little nub on the end is sort of pointing down. This nub is also pointing down. Well, this one is pointing right. This one's pointing right to the left, up, right, left, up. It has to tile 4 different ways. So I'll mark it up a little bit here. On every edge of this piece, notice these like little divots in the stones. You've kind of got one here, one at the corner, and one here. It needs to tile 4 different ways, right? So we kind of need it to do the same thing on every different side. So a divot there, a divot there, a divot there, there, and I'll just continue marking this up. So you can see, I'll zoom in. You can see how if you were to rotate this piece, you have the same sort of like divots at the edge in this texture. And this is, to my knowledge, relatively easy to do, at least at the edges. So like your stuff doesn't have to, it can do whatever in the middle here, but at the edges, it all has to link up no matter what. Like if you rotate this piece, like it's also going to have, oops, where's my pen? It's going to have the same divots. Which it might be a little difficult at first, but again, like in order for it to tile correctly, it has to do that. Walls are a little different. They only have to go horizontally, as I mentioned. One example in Skyrim is the Solitude set. So if I were to zoom in a little bit on these pieces, you can notice the tiling, like this is one unit of the texture. Like it's not repeating at all. It starts here, it ends here. And then notice how like you have this nail right here. Here, I'll just, whoops. You have like a nail here, you have a nail there. You have the same thing, so it's tiling along each piece. It's repeating itself. So you're going to want to make sure it tiles, basically. Same thing for this like plaster section. You've got like this crack right here. You've also got a crack right here. And notice on this side of this piece, this crack continues. So it tiles. It's not going to look like an obvious seam. Now this is kind of a special case because Bethesda cheated a little bit and added these vertex colors here, and that's mainly because this set also has insets, which I'll talk about later. But they designed it in such a way that instead of just smacking these 2 wall pieces together, they would have a pillar piece here. And that's to show like architectural support, just greater detail, stuff like that. I don't think I have an example of that in the cave tile set later, but I don't have an example for the Solitude set, which admittedly is a shortcoming of this presentation. I think that's it for tiling. Oh no. Oh, okay. Yeah. So a little mention about texel density. You want to make sure it's consistent across your set. Notice how the floor here and the wall here, the squares are the same size in this test texture. That is not the case in this bottom example. So if your texture was a different size on the walls than it was on the floor, let's say like this was the Skyrim wall or Skyrim floor Nordic texture, Nordic ruin texture, this one. I'm not speaking correctly. And then imagine the wall was like this wood texture. If this wall has like double the detail as the floor, players are going to be like, okay, why is that the case if they're paying like a lot of attention? Sometimes it'll just look ugly. It won't necessarily be that somebody will look at this and be like, wow, why does that have more detail? They'll look at the floor and say, oh, why does that have not a lot of detail? You know what I mean? So you want to make sure your texel density is preserved. And when I talk about Vivec City later, that's one of my biggest challenges is we have, the city is enormous and the tile set is, it's so different across the entire thing that when I UV map the thing, like sometimes texel density goes just nuts and like it's really hard to match everything up. So in a simple set like this, you know, it might not be the case that it'll be difficult, but it can get there, definitely. Okay, last note on texel density, just to hit it home, I guess. Notice how these two pieces in the Solitude set have different geometries. So this has like a little stone portion here. This does not have a stone portion here. What Bethesda did not do was break the texel density rules and sort of squish an entire texture into this section. Like they did not squish this whole portion and put it here. What they did was they cut the UV so that the texel density was preserved and it can continue tiling. So if you were to smack these two pieces together, you know, these cracks would continue rather than these cracks being squished and put up here. Same thing with the wood. It's a little harder to tell just because the wood runs only vertically. But these slats right here are not squished in comparison to these. That's basically it for texel density and tiling. So in summary, for all you 3D guys, there are three main concepts for building a tile set. It's the grid system and the footprint of all your pieces. It's snapping of all your pieces, so that deals with the origin, the pivot points, all those placements, and tiling, and that's all the texture stuff. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask now, or we can talk about it after, whatever works. Aside from that, we'll continue on. Okay, so I have just this one slide in here for people who want to like come back and look at this later. I'm not going to go over this a whole lot now, but if you want to make a tile set in Blender, for example, which is how I do it because it's free, haha. You want to set up your Blender scene correctly. You want to emulate Creation Kit. Otherwise, when you go to snap in Blender, it won't be the same snap as it is in Creation Kit. It'll act completely differently if you're not using Skyrim units, the same scale. If you're just not snapping correctly, it won't work. It won't transfer very well.
Hey,
So,
Zix, can you hear me?
Yeah, what's up?
Hey, sorry, I do have a question. What you're teaching here relating to tile sets and the snapping points, does that correlate with Fallout 4's snapping points when you can do that kind of in-game with objects where they kind of snap together and you build forts and stuff?
I would
It's kind
guess
of the same.
so. Yeah, I would guess so. I haven't played around with the settlement system too much. That's what you're referring to, right?
It is, yes. I was just curious because I mean it's kind of built on the same Creation Kit engine, so I just figured they might be related. It just seemed interesting. I don't know.
I think for Fallout 4, if I remember correctly, you have several points on a mesh that you can snap things to.
Mm-hmm.
This is different in that this is the one central point of the mesh. The points that you can snap things to in Fallout 4 are defined in the NIF to other places on the grid, but not necessarily the central point like is described here.
Gotcha. Okay.
Cool. Yeah, I can only talk in detail about Skyrim stuff. but I imagine those like work on the same grid, be it the 64, 128, 256 system. Okay, yeah. So basically, in summary, this page is just for like if you're going to make a tile set, or if you're going to set a scene up to make one, follow these to a T, and it should work perfectly fine, exactly like Creation Kit. More or less, you're going to want to set the snapping to be a certain way. You're going to want to set your scale to be a certain way. Notice how the scale is in Skyrim units. It's a little odd scale-wise, but I mean, I just did this so that the squares in the scene were a little smaller, or bigger rather, so it's easier to snap. And then same for the like units here. You want to make sure it's in metric. The scale's to 1. Other software, I have no idea. Sorry for you guys who pay for Maya and pay for 3ds Max, but I'm not going to do that. I imagine your menus are somewhat similar. Okay, so let's say you're going to make a tile set. You need to start out by planning. None of this happens without planning. If you just like sort of go into it and you bum rush it, like it is not going to work. It is not going to look good. The level designers are not going to like what you give them, and you're going to have to go back and potentially redo work, which I have had to do several times. So, speaking from experience, in the beginning, you basically want to figure out what your set needs to accomplish. So, in this little example test kit that I made, I wanted it to accomplish small rooms, so it's got small pieces here. I wanted it to have big rooms, and I wanted it to have hallways. So you need to figure out what it needs to accomplish. Same thing for like, this is the Skyrim Dwemer set. They have a couple different things. I'm not exactly sure what everything is. Like it looks like they wanted to have giant sort of structures. Imagine Blackreach, stuff like that. They also have like small rooms here. They have these free hanging like bridge pieces. These pieces that make towers. Stuff like that. So they wanted to do a lot of different things with this set. You could kind of tell. And then from that, you can figure out what pieces or what shapes you need to make. And when you're doing the planning phase, you have to consider time. So how much time do you want to put into it? Do you have enough time to make the whole tile set? Because if you have 50 different people working on the same tile set, it might get a little difficult. It might not snap together because one person was doing something one way and it was different from the way you were doing it. They might set up texel density differently. So, these large room pieces or these large structure pieces might have a texel density of like whatever value it is. Like they might have tiled their texture 4 times the size of the small rooms. So when you're going from large structure to smaller rooms, it's like, okay, why did my textures dip in quality 4 times? So you want to consider the time if you're working on it alone or if you have somebody. And I guess that goes into communication. Like if 2 people are working on a tile set, you want to always constantly be in communication with each other. Also, regarding communication, like if you're on a project like I'm on Skywind and you want things tested properly, if you don't want to test it yourself, basically find a level designer and stick with that level designer. Meet like every week if you're going to test it. I think Mel is in the call, but Mel and I, for like months, we met at least once every week to like on the weekends to try to figure out new Vivec city pieces and sort of put them together and does this tile well? Do we want this for a certain canton? Yada, yada, yada. Same thing for like 3D. You should be in communication with 2D because if they have a concept and you're doing it incorrectly, which oftentimes I do, admittedly, you want to make sure you're on the right track. Otherwise, you're going to be redoing work, you're going to be doing redundant work, and you're going to get really frustrated. So that's it for planning. Now you're going to want to build your set, I guess. Tile sets can be broken up into a lot of different subsections. I'm going to try to describe it as well as I can here. Tileset is very broad. It can be like every single Nordic piece ever, might be considered the Skyrim Nordic tileset. Every single Dwemer piece, like this is an entire tileset, more or less. I mean, there's probably more pieces, and this is all withholding clutter. But tileset is broad again. So there are sub-tilesets within that. In this little example over here, I have 3 sub-tilesets. I have large rooms, I have small rooms, and I have hallways. From those sub-tilesets, you have a core set of pieces. So a core set of pieces might be this mid piece, it might be this wall piece, it might be this corner in piece, it might be this corner out piece. So core set of pieces. From that, you'll also have variants. So you might have like 5 or 6 different wall types so that level designers can, go nuts with their creativity, and that every room is not going to look the same. And then as little notes, I mentioned insets quickly. I'll talk about them quickly too, but they're not used in every single set. It's more like pillars and caves and like just flat walls so you can break up big rooms. And then transition pieces. So transition pieces are big, but I don't go too much into detail because it's pretty obvious. These are transition pieces. So going from like small rooms to hallways, or large rooms to hallways, or small rooms to large rooms. So transition pieces are cool. And then oh my god, I love hero pieces. Valentine's Day, haha, I said the word love. Hero pieces are awesome, but they're a lot of work. They're usually like one-offs, big set pieces for like main quests, sort of dungeons. They're part of the tile set because they end up having to connect back to, the rest of your dungeon. But they're considered hero pieces, as Bethesda puts it, because they're big set pieces. Like they're huge. They're, oh my god, like the player should be like, wow, when they enter this room. Stuff like that. Just to go into more detail, so core pieces might be level designers. You'll recognize this nomenclature. 3D guys, pay attention to the nomenclature here on the side. If you're making a tile set, this is kind of the nomenclature you want to use because this is how it is. Just like Bethesda set it up, and this is how the nomenclature is in CK. So you've got your corner in pieces here, so the corner goes in on itself. You've got mid pieces, so like middle of the room. You've got wall pieces, of course, corner out, so the corner goes out here. And then for like hallways, for example, you have one way, you have two way. I guess this is a two-way too, but it only goes one direction. One way, two way, three way. So it's a little hard to tell here, but there's like it's a 3-way connection and then a 4-way connection. And this might be, you might have more to your core depending on what you're doing. Like you might have a vertical thing that's part of your core that's used throughout, like, I don't know, whatever motif you're going for in your tile set, be it like a neat dungeon or something. Like you might have tower pieces that go up or something, but it'll basically be your core, these pieces. Okay, and then you'll have variants of everything. So I mentioned these in the Skyrim Nordic tile set. Just for these small rooms, you have 5 different wall variants. So notice how some of these are just like, this crack is a little different from that crack, is a little different from this one doesn't have any crack. This one's a little big, it has some more brick here. Whereas this one has like completely different geometry. And if you, I guess I could zoom in on this piece. It has a little like, from this angle it's hard to tell. It closes off, this is like a little arch right here. It closes off the arch. So it's just different from the rest of these. Same thing for these bottom ones. There's variants on the walls. So you've got wall 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then some of them are just texture swaps. So this one is a texture swap from that one. This one is a texture swap from this one, from this one, from this one. And then some of them have different geometries. So, these ones that cut off at the bottom here, these ones don't. Variants are important for dungeons and homes, especially interior things, because this is what level designers use to vary their stuff. It gives them options. It just makes the whole game more diverse, more interesting. Imagine if every Solitude house was just this. Every single wall was just this. Imagine how boring that would get. So variants are important. Transition pieces, we'll mention them quickly because they're simple. You basically just want, like, you know, with every subtile set, they still need to connect back to each other. So you're never going to have a small room not connect to a large room. Otherwise, you know, your dungeon is just going to be all large rooms or all small rooms. So this is a transition piece, as simple as it gets. It's just a little cutout in a small room wall, and it snaps to the hallway. Same thing for the large room. Transitions can be really interesting. So they can be room to hall, room to a different type of room, or tile set to tile set. So in a Skywind example, again, this is a Dwemer set piece that's also a cave tile set piece. So it transitions from Dwemer to cave. So if there was a cave in, or if like something blew up the wall and it goes into a cave, like this is huge for level designers. They don't have to try to make their own transition pieces with like rocks and stone and random rubble and crap that doesn't really look very good in practice. They can have this transition piece, which is super easy. They just slap it in, you know, throw some rubble on top, and Italian chef hand emoji, you've got the coolest transition ever. And it's all just by making one tile set piece that snaps to both tile sets. You've got insets, so mentioning these briefly, they're usually only used in organic looking tile sets, and it's to make it so that the tile set does not look like a tile set. So caves, Pedro probably knows this a whole lot. You've got pillars, you've got these just flat wall pieces, you've got tons of rocks, you've got rock piles, yada yada. These insets are huge because imagine if the cave tile set was just, you know, a Lego block next to Lego block next to Lego block. You'd have square rooms, which looks gross. It's unnatural. You'd have, like, all the rocks would be the same. It would tile the same way along a hallway. So you'd see the same, like, 3 rocks along the floor like 50 different times. So insets are huge. They're big for organic things. I tried to find some examples in like one of our Skywind sets. You've got these for like the Dwemer. These are like free walls. You can sort of put them. I'm pretty sure they tile with like the rest of our stuff. If you see like these pipes at this level, you've also got the pipes at the same level. They're just mainly to like break up rooms and stuff, make it so that the rooms aren't like as tile set-ish along the whole thing. Pillars, again, pretty big, flat, just to break stuff up. It's not as important for dungeons per se, but insets can be pretty nice for creativity and differentiation. And oh my god, okay, so I love hero pieces, but good lord, it's like a love-hate relationship. This is one hero piece, hero in quotes. They're big budget set pieces, so they take a lot of time and effort to make, and they're usually only one-offs. I can't remember where this even shows up more than once in Skyrim. Like, I know this shows up in the Wolf Queen quest, but like, that's it. Like, if you guys have more examples, feel free to shout it out. But like, this one probably took so much time to make, but only shows up once or twice, or I don't know. Like, modders probably use this a lot because it looks cool. But they're usually unique pieces, one-offs, and oftentimes they're used as like a finisher for a quest line. So, like I said, the Wolf Queen quest, you know, you come in here, you fight her. She's got her big like glowy orb purple thing. She's like, fight me or whatever. And the fight was memorable. Like, I remember it. It was pretty cool. Yeah, so when you build hero pieces, you want to think a lot about time and effort. So do you want to build this hero piece because it's a one-off? Like, how long is it going to take to make? How much effort do you want to put into it? And then in addition to that, can the level designers make this hero piece with other pieces? Like, can they make their own set pieces, like big, oh my god, quest rooms on their own with the other pieces from the tile set? So there's a lot that goes into considering whether or not you want to make a hero piece. Another example from the Nordic tile set, I consider these to be hero pieces. Everybody remembers these. You've got the stupid like claw puzzle door. You've got like the murals on here. This is always like leading up to a word wall or whatever in Skyrim. This piece transitions back to large room or large hallway, one or the other. That sub tile set. So it's still part of the tile set, but it's a hero piece because it's not used as often, or it's used as, the end of a dungeon. This one's used more often. It's used in like every Nordic dungeon, but I'd still consider these hero pieces because there's only 1, 2, and there's like an inset piece, a 3-piece sub-tile set. Okay, so this one is not really a hero piece, but I still kind of consider it a hero piece. This is the entirety of Skyhaven Temple. It might come as a surprise to you. It's just one freaking NIF. Just one NIF. Like, it's one 3D model, which is totally dumb. It's missing some things, of course, like the altar here that comes out, or the table. Some clutter, obviously. But, like, think of Bethesda's thought process behind this, right? So you've got the Blades quest line, the main quest line, whatever. And they wanted to have one Akaviri dungeon, I guess. Could they have done the same thing with a tile set? Could we have gotten more Akaviri dungeons had they made this into a tile set? Or was it less effort to make this one hero piece and then just kind of call it a day? You know what I mean? Looking at this plays to the idea of, do you want hero pieces or do you not want hero pieces? So imagine if they did the same thing with like the Dwemer set. Like if they just made, each dungeon one model or 2 models, like they only had like 3 types, and then just called it a day. Like, what would we have gotten then? You know what I mean? So when you think about hero pieces, think about what you could do instead. Think about, like, do I really want a hero piece? Would it be really cool? Would it be, not cool? It depends. So I just like to throw this up all the time. Like, this is my favorite stupid example of what Bethesda could have done instead. Like, imagine if we had more than just Skyhaven Temple and Skyrim. That would have been so cool. Anyway, we'll talk a little bit about sort of how tile sets can be used. This plays to level designers a little bit. Anybody from Skywind here will recognize exactly what this is. But yeah. I pulled this dungeon from our latest gameplay video. So this is me shilling Skywind for like 2 seconds. Haha. If you haven't seen the video, go watch it. It's awesome. For a 3D person, tile sets are usually used as they're intended. Here in this first section, it's used basically like by the book. You've got these greens, which are hall pieces. You've got the yellows, which are like small rooms. And then you've got the reds, which are like large rooms, more vertical. But once it's in the hand of the level designer, once it's in Creation Kit, it's sort of up to the level designer to figure out what the heck they want to do. It's up to their creativity. So you sort of hand it off and they do whatever the hell they want. In this next slide, this is the same dungeon, but like, where the hell's the tile set, right? Like, it's a little difficult. Maybe this is part of the tile set. Maybe this is part of the tile set. Who knows? Also, it just plays to the creativity of the level designer. In our like Battle.net and whatever video, you can tell if you were to go back and look that this is somewhat of a tile set. And then this is like caves, so it transitions relatively well. And then it breaks into another tile set, which is Daedric. It plays to the level designer's creativity. It plays to, you don't have to go as basic as this with a tile set as a level designer. As a 3D person, don't expect every dungeon to look like this. You can be a lot more creative, and it all depends on how you design that tile set. So imagine if there wasn't like some free wall like transition pieces here. What would this have looked like instead? It might have been like just a plain old door here, and that's it, with like a really shitty cave transition. And then how great would that look? So you want to design your tile set in a way that level designers can be creative, and that they don't have to like ham fist, their own sort of creativity while it looking bad. So that's playing to that a little bit. Okay, so just to give you like the best example of one, sort of a work in progress tile set. This is what I've been working on recently. This is probably going to be my magnum opus for like the Skywind project. Me and like a handful of other people have been working on it. I think Gamma Metroid's in the call. Mel's been working on it. A bunch of other people have been working on it. And I'll just go into some detail about like, this is my process for making this tile set. Like here are some examples of like previously in the PowerPoint, like how I used those little snippets of information to make this tile set, and then how it transitions to how a level designer uses it and how they make it look good in game. So just as a little note, this is our concept art for Vivec City. It was made by Roman Dupina, who I don't think he's part of the team anymore, but he's on Skyblivion, so definitely check him out. He makes really great stuff. But immediately you'll notice that it's, oh my god, totally different from vanilla. Like, vanilla looks very copy-paste, very boring. If they used a tile set, which I don't think they did, it's just, you've got wall pieces, and then you've got corners, and then you've got the same thing on top, and then you've got the same thing on bottom, and then there's a dome, and then some buttresses that are copy-paste again, and bridges that are copy-paste, and that's about it. We ended up doing it a little differently, and I'll go into that in some detail. Like, our design is not copy-paste. And just to rip the Band-Aid off immediately, this is what our tile set looks like so far in the Blender scene. To reiterate some, the goals of this tile set, it was to reimagine the city as it was intended. So if you look at like concept art for Morrowind, even, it's a whole lot better looking than this. Like, you've got some open cantons, you've got some, cantons that are shaped differently, kind of like our concept art. So that was one of the goals of making the tile set. We wanted to make it feel better, so it was confusing as hell. It also plays into like sort of the copy paste nature of it. Like, which one was this? Do you remember which one was this? Do you remember like that one? Do we remember what that one was? Who knows? Because they don't look the same. So again, that was another goal that we had. We wanted to make each individual canton feel unique, and that transitions perfectly into the challenges. By making each canton unique, there's a lot more work that goes into making the tile sets, because you have so many sub-tile sets that you need to make. I basically had to make a sub-tile set for each canton, for each level of each canton, like bottom, top, mid, or bottom, mid, top. Some other challenges we had were size of the tile set. So we wanted to make the textures look as good as possible without repeating too much or losing texel density quality. So we had to play to, making quality textures and preserving tile or texel density across this whole thing, which it's been a challenge to say the least. like I said, number of subtile sets. NPCs are a big problem, so I'll talk about it later, but these transition pieces, these bridge pieces, have to be a certain length, have to be a certain size. So I had to make so many unique transition pieces in order to optimize in-engine, like where NPCs will be, how many NPCs are loaded at a time, et cetera, et cetera. And because it's an exterior tile set, we also had to deal with the issue of LOD, or long draw distance, whatever that stands for. So like it's a tile set, so halfway through the city, we didn't want it so that you're standing on Redoran Canton or whatever. We didn't want Olms Canton to just magically pop in at some point and suddenly have like a high level of detail as you're walking. So that was another challenge that came up in development. Okay, so here we've got a couple core. Just to go back to like the basics of making a tile set, we've got core subtile sets. Each one of these is a subtile set with core pieces in it. We've got, oh lord, which ones? These are the docks. So we've got like a docks subtile set. We've got a lower canal level subtile set. We've got a mid level subtile set. Top. We've got one specifically for Lalu because it's a unique canton. I needed to make unique pieces. We've got one subtile set devoted to Olms, which is a unique canton. And then I've got these little shitty houses here. In addition to that, we had variants of some pieces. So the vanilla Vivec City was a little odd in that like it's just cardboard boxes with like no windows, no holes. These little slits here are like breathing holes almost for like, you put a frog in a jar or whatever. It's kind of the same thing, but with like dark elves. So we wanted some of these in the tile set so you can see how this is obviously a variant of that. And then this is a variant of that in that we have differently shaped walls to sort of make the cantons feel a little different depending on where you are. Same for like docks. So like for the docks, I just have a flat floor piece. And then there's a piece with like a drain in it with 3D geometric data to sort of show that, like if you get water on the docks or whatever, it'll drain out rather than just kind of pooling there and flooding. Transition pieces were huge. I'm going to speed up in this last portion because I'm running out of time. But transition pieces were big because of the subtile sets, because of how many there were. I had to make so many different transition pieces. Again, with distancing with NPCs and like how many things were loaded, I had to make so many different bridges. I had to make what are these? These go along with the bridges. These are like canal level to docks. These are like canal level to mid level. These are like mid level to top level. Yada yada. This is an example one. So you would go through these stairs, and this would be you're on the mid level, and then you'd walk up, and then you'd be on the top level. So transition piece, easy peasy. To talk a little bit about the bridges, they're all different. Like none of these are the same length. This one is from Redoran to Lalu, for example, at the mid level, so like up top. This is Redoran to Telvanni at the bottom level, so like I have to take into account a lot when I'm making these. That's why there's so many. And this is why I love hero pieces so much. I have to make so many hero pieces for Vivec City because we want it to feel so unique, because we want it to feel so different. So, for example, like we have these outer walls of the city. It was always odd that it was like not protected, I guess. It was protected by the land, but, very easily the Empire or whoever could just like sit on the land and sort of siege it. Stuff like that. We have these like sea gates with like portcullises. You could have seen it on the concept art. We've got one gate, another gate into the city. So these are all unique pieces that are one-offs, hero pieces. And these buttresses, because the cantons I can't speak. Because the cantons are all unique, these buttresses are all unique. They have to be tailor-made, so they're hero pieces, I consider them. And oh yeah, this is one of my favorite. I just love this. It's a little gazebo almost. I sort of made it because why not? It was fun. It's a hero piece. It's a one-off. And just to quickly go through it, this is what it all looks like together in the Blender scene. I highly recommend, if you're making a tile set as a 3D guy, like, do this. Make an example dungeon in your scene, because if you don't, you'll throw it in to Creation Kit. You'll find so many issues. And the last thing you want to have happen, trust me, speaking from experience, the last thing you want to have happen is you give so many presents to your landscaper, your level designer, whatever, and they come back first thing and say, oh, there's a seam between this piece and this piece. And then you just want to bash your head against the wall, and you just want to not do it anymore. But, yeah, this is what it looks like all together. It's pretty cool, honestly. I think there's a lot that we can see needs to be fixed. So, like, see these vertex colors here? They don't exactly match up. Continuing on, like, texel density, that's another issue I sort of have. This one's a little less dense than, or this one's more dense than this one, as you can kind of tell with the repeating textures. So just some stuff to sort of pay attention to as a 3D guy. I'm running out of time. This is what it looks like in Creation Kit. This is just one example. It's a different Canton, but this is sort of like what the pieces look like. To talk a little bit about, remember how like level designers can use their creativity to do whatever? I did not expect this to happen. Like, I did not plan for these pieces to look this way. But the level designer was like, hey, this looks cool. So, sure. Yeah, I mean, it's a different way to use the tile set. Like, expect the level designers to do different things with the tile set than what you expect. And just to conclude, this is what it looks like in game. A little snippet, sneak peek. This is foreign Canton, of course, because Imperial insignia there. Yeah, that's about it. Just again, as like a disclaimer, like, this is not final. The textures, just since like last month for me taking this picture, the textures are different. We have NPCs here. We have more clutter than just like the lamp and the banners. Everything's a little bit different from this screenshot, so work in progress. Don't forget that. For you 3D guys who want to do stuff, a couple extra tools for you. I'll link this wherever it's easy, or I'll just throw the PowerPoint up in the Discord. I have this for you guys if you want to play around. I don't mind. Feel free to take it. I made this for you guys. This texel density texture is huge. It helps me all the time for checking texel density, texture, repetition, all that stuff. NifScope is good. We can do a follow-up presentation on like implementation if you want sometime. And same thing, CKCMD for implementation. I'd like to thank the Skywind team. Oh my god, they give me life like every freaking day. Otherwise, I'd probably be 6 feet under. Beyond Skyrim, I'd like to thank you guys. We collaborate a good bit. Thanks for this awesome platform at the Arcane University. I've learned a lot from here. I hope you guys learn a lot from here too. And then my references, guys, check these out if you want more info on this, because Bethesda, I referenced their video on this. They basically do the same presentation, but more professionally than I did. And it's for Fallout 4. Same thing. This is like an article about Skyrim. Yeah, that's about it. I think I ran over a little bit, but thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate everybody listening.
Oh, thank you, Zix. That was awesome.
And no worries, man. My lesson's not going to be more than an hour. Or
oh, okay.
Not even going to be an hour. So you running over is fine. Makes it a little bit more compact for everyone to get a consistent lesson plan.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you. That was brilliant.
That was awesome, yeah.
Yeah.
That was great. Thanks.
Wow.
Really
Yeah, no
slick
problem.
show.
Oh, Pedro, if you don't mind, is my stream still up?
Yep. Stream's still up.
Yep.
All right, guys. So just as a little fun, like, haha, it's Valentine's Day. I made a really simple tile set, 2 pieces. Only 2 pieces. You might be able to guess what I'm doing here.
Oh my lord.
It's an ass.
Not
knew
quite.
Close enough.
Bikini.
Not quite.
The One Piece.
Oh shit! It doesn't tile.
It does die.
A day in the life of Zix.
Don't worry. We'll get it to work. It's Valentine's Day Eve, right? Like we gotta do something special like this.
I see what's happening here.
Yeah, right. Like picking up on that pretty quick. It's really fun to try to stumble around with blender controls when you have an audience.
Good timing.
Oh, do I feel you?
Happy
Aww.
Valentine's Day Eve, everybody.
So cute.